If I could go back and talk to my younger self, the young cook grinding through long hours, chasing perfection, and trying to prove myself in every kitchen, I'd have a lot to say. Not just about food, but about leadership, the myth of balance, and what it really takes to build a career. Success and sustainability. And on top of that, a successful, sustainable career, because those things often live in a vacuum and definitely live away from each other. See, over the course of the past 30 years, I've learned a lot, and most of it the hard way, through competition, failures, rebuilding, and figuring out what really matters, as well as investing in coaches, spending time with mentors, and time spent in recovery after burning myself to the ground. Today, I'm sharing just a few of those lessons in a way that I wish someone had shared them with me. These are a little organized, and I'll tell you more about that later, but this is how I help chefs build careers with meaning, sustainability, and effect. It's not just about survival, but about mastery, impact, and longevity. If you want to get this list emailed to you, then by all means click the link in the description or get the guide in the comments below, because I've compiled a list and I'm more than happy to share that with you, as well as some ideas to overcome them. So let's dive in. You got to know where you're going. See, early in my career, I was obsessed with moving as fast as possible and getting through each day. I was perfecting techniques, executing services, proving myself as much as humanly possible, but what I didn't realize was that success isn't just about skill and execution, it's about having a clear vision for where you're going so you can do things that get you where you want to go sooner. It's okay to wander, it's okay to meander, it's okay to discover, but at the same time, if you're working on going and traveling a particular direction, you're likely to reach your goal faster. So what I would say is set a big ass goal. For me, I decided that I wanted to be a CMC before I was 15, and that's just a collection of circumstances that got me there. I watched a master chef cook, and although I had no idea what I was talking about, I decided that I was going to do that. That's what I wanted to do with my life, period. If you don't know what your long-term goal is, that's fine, but just know that you're going to end up reacting to every opportunity instead of strategically choosing those that move you in the direction of your goal. When I had that goal, I was able to reference opportunities as they popped up that would take me in that direction. Next, the best chefs manage beyond the food. I didn't understand this when I was a young cook because I thought it was all about the food. And I think it should be earlier on in the career, but by the time you reach sous chef, you need to transition to understanding that there's a lot of other things beyond the food, the people, the ordering, the logistics in the operation. Because at the end of the day, the best chefs don't just cook. In fact, they don't cook much. They create dishes, and on top of that, they create the pathways for growth, futures for themselves, futures for their teams, and experiences for their guests. So think beyond just the food. Next lesson here is that clarity of vision reduces burnout. I know this because when I was training for the Olympics and I was running the culinary program at the Ford, I ran myself into the ground because I was making everything a first priority. When everything's a priority, nothing is. It's very important to be able to select the things that are moving the bars forward and be able to focus and work on those. When there's a clear vision, you're working towards something, not just grinding away without purpose. Busy does not mean effective. That was an error that I made many times over. And I think it's really important to just draw attention to it, that just because I'm busy doesn't mean that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing or that I'm doing it in the most effective way. Next, say no to things that don't align with that long-term vision. This is why it's so important to have a vision. And the longer out that it is, the more likely you are to align with it. The more value you're capable of bringing, the more people will want it, right? So that means that not every opportunity is for you. Opportunity overload is real. You've got to be able to say no. Those no's are almost infinitely more important than the yes. In fact, I would say for every yes that you say to an opportunity, it comes with at least 1,000 no's in order to be able to complete it and deliver at the standard that's most important to you. Another one, sustainable isn't a bad word. I'm not talking about like environmental sustainability because it's quite important. I think everybody agrees with that. But Sustainable in the world of a chef for our lives, it's not a bad word. I shied away from it when I was younger because that wasn't where I was trying to go. I was kind of the philosophy that it's better to burn out than it is to fade away, and I was definitely trying to burn the candle at both ends. Consistent progress, day in and day out, is going to take you further than massive creative bursts. So working in a sustainable fashion on a consistent basis is how progress is really made. I knew this from my exercise life because I had worked with my brother who was a good trainer. I had worked with other trainers, and I knew this from exercise at the gym. Success is built one rep at a time. But I had to learn how to apply that into my own life in the kitchen and develop a sustainable work ethic. High operation, but in a sustainable fashion. Had to learn to work that into my day-to-day. And what I'm saying is that sustainable means planning for consistency and strategizing to stay in the game long term. Buying good shoes, keeping your feet healthy, making sure that you're going to your dentist visits and having your teeth looked at. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to forget and lose sight of the fact that, time is on your side. But at the same time, 15 years into the business, it's very easy to have a laundry list of things that you've neglected, and it's really hard to play catch up. So strategize to stay in that long-term game and understand that sustainability and longevity are what are going to improve your quality of life in the long run. Take the time to define what success looks like. Having a strong vision attracts the right opportunities, so you don't have to wait for them to come. And it also allows you to discern between those opportunities. So in advance, if you take the time to kind of define what success looks like for you, you kind of draw a picture of what opportunity you want to take. So define them so that you know what it's going to look like. That way you can recognize it when it's presented to you in your face. If I was to summarize all of that into a short little blip, I would say, decide where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, or even if you're so bold, 20. Think through the path. Imagine traveling that path and determine where you want to arrive at. Then, as you get into your day-to-day and as you're making your way through your journey, make your decisions based on whether it moves you closer or further from that big-ass goal. And if you start this young, you'll learn what's for you, what's not for you, the things that you need to modify. You may realize that you want to change fields completely, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the longer you stay with a thing, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to gain, and the more value you're going to bring to the marketplace, which ultimately is what sets you up for sustainability in the long run. Domain number 2, operational mastery. Work smarter, not just harder. Now, there was a time when I thought working the hardest was the answer to everything. But I learned the hard way that systems are a large part of the answer and a huge part of working smart. So when it comes to systems lessons, I think it's most important to share that a chaotic kitchen is usually that way because it lacks the management of systems. That may be an entire lack of systems, but at the very least, it's a lack of the management of some systems. Think about going to the grocery store or getting gas. The world that we live in is built and based on systems, probably that we just take for granted if you haven't ever really thought through it. So take a minute and think about all of the things that have to take place so that you can pull up to a gas pump and fill up the tank. There's a lot of things that need to take place, and the kitchen is just no different. As a cook, I think, depending on how you come up, it's really easy to take for granted all of the steps that need to take place in order for food to show up on your station so you can cook it. Maybe you have a prep cook. Boom, that's a step. Maybe you have a purchaser. Maybe you have to order your own food. All of those little things are a step, right? All of those little things contribute to the greater whole of the system. Systems management is what gets the team what they need in a more automated fashion. The key to automation and the key to freeing up mental capacity and making things more effective is automating as many of those systems as humanly possible, so that literally your team can pull up into the walk-in, load up their mise en place, and move on. Performance comes from repeatable, optimized workflows, and that eliminates wasted effort. When I say workflow, think process, a flow of work. Once this happens, then this can happen, then this can happen, then this can happen. And the more that you're paying attention to those things, the more that your team around you can get done. At the end of the day, we all have the same 24 hours. Depending on how much time you spend in the kitchen, definitely determines how much you're going to get done in a day, but I realize that every day I have about 14 hours worth of work effort. If I'm not optimizing the work to the level of work that I need to do and delegating and sharing the rest of it with everybody else, then I'm simply burning up time and I'm not getting the work done that I need to be doing. Another lesson here is that the goal of the day can't be to get through service. It's gotta be a bigger goal. See, to create an operation that functions without constant firefighting, there has to be a bigger strive than to just get through service, than to just get through this moment. Big piece is helping people see a little bit further out than what's just right in front of them. Helping a cook learn to prep for tomorrow, helping a sous chef understand that there's events coming on the weekends, or helping my executive sous chef think a couple of weeks in advance so we can really start having an impact on operations. As a chef, I've got to look 6 months out. I've got to be 12 months out because nobody else is going to be. So helping cooks understand that the goal can't just be to get through service is a really big piece. And that's why it's something that I would really spend a lot of time trying to convince myself is really important because, well, there were definitely a good number of days where my goal was to just get through the day. There's nothing wrong with getting through the day, but that can't be where all the time is spent, and that can't be the mentality every day, or it's never going to get better. Next lesson, everything that happens regularly should have a standardized process that's defined and ideally documented, from receiving orders to cleaning stations. Why? Well, because it's something that needs to get done, and there's no reason why having a little checklist to help it get done and to help ensure it gets done, that will support the operation and that will support the team far better than most anything else that anybody can do will. It's staggering the improvement that a checklist can make on an operation. Next, the best chefs don't just focus on execution, they actually work on building structure. Structure leads to creating processes and systems that people can follow. And as a chef, if you're working to create structure, infrastructure, patterns, processes, and lists, you're gonna have a team that's infinitely more effective than people who are always just working from their memory and lacking training. Training is so much easier to build when you have documentation. Next, if you're fixing the same problem over and over again, you don't just have a workload issue, you have a process issue. If you're the executive chef, no one can solve process issues but you. It took me a long time to figure that out. Regretfully, I'm sad to admit that it took me way longer than I would like to admit. But that's just the reality. Nobody's coming to save you. The process situations, the process problems are yours to solve. I spent a lot of time hiding at the stove early on in my career when I should have really been working on process issues, hiring pieces. And if those things are being delegated out to somebody else, or worse, abdicated, get into that later, then inevitably that's going to not get done because nobody's going to put the work into it that you understand needs to be. If I had to make it simple, I would summarize it to my younger self by saying that instead of just pushing harder, ask, what system can I create or implement to make it easier for everybody involved? Domain 3, staffing and command. Because leadership is not about you. I used to think that leadership meant being the best cook in the kitchen. And in some ways, it definitely helps get you into leadership roles. And I also used to think that if I just showed up, worked harder, and outcooked everyone, I'd be a great leader and people would follow me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Leadership is not about you. When I was on the Culinary Olympic team and I had an opportunity to work myself into the captain's spot, I spent a lot of time worrying about what everybody else was doing and losing my position. And I learned very quickly that when I made it about me, the team suffered. When I spent more time setting my team up for success, we did infinitely better. I had to lose focus on me and how I was impacted when I was trying to benefit the team. At the end of the day, it's really about getting your team to function without you. The next lesson when it comes to staffing and command is that hiring the right people matters so much more than I remember giving it credit for. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier than fixing the wrong hires. So make sure to take the time and hire great people. Put the effort into it, learn the hiring skills, develop all of those little pieces that make you far more effective and efficient, and take the time to hire great people. Next great lesson came from Chef Ken Arnone, and that's a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And the best chefs that I've ever worked with, they work to develop others so that they strengthen each link in the chain. Because your kitchen is only going to be as strong as your weakest team member. And the more you work to strengthen the team, the more your team works to help itself and to take care of one another. You don't train people once. You train progressively, and then you end up coaching them every single day. Little reminders, little lessons, little keys, little tidbits along the way. It's very important to remember that training is not a one-time thing. It's a constant, ever-evolving, fully engaged process. Next, leadership requires trust. Not only does this mean holding people accountable, it means holding yourself even more accountable while you're working to support their growth. Trust requires a constant stream of communication, effort, energy, and work to make sure that you're interacting with the people that are around you to better their situation and help ensure that they feel comfortable bringing you information and taking feedback from you. And breaking that trust in many cases means that it won't come back. In order to continue building trusts and creating that environment where you do so, I think it's really important to make sure that you remember to look in the mirror. When I was a young boy, I remember my dad saying, you've got to make sure that you can look yourself in the mirror every day and shave, because that's the moment when you realize you're doing the right thing or you're not. And if you can't look yourself in the face when you look in the mirror, then you should probably reconsider how you're approaching things. And it's going to be even harder to recognize probably the biggest problem that you have to overcome, and that's you. Now remember, I'm talking to a younger version of me, and so I'm going to be blunt and blatant and obvious, and I would very easily tell myself, well, looking at me, you're your own biggest problem. Because when it comes to problem solving, the quickest solution is to look at how you're leading and what you're doing before you work down the ladder. Instead of working on placing blame somewhere, figure out what you could be doing that's causing these breakdowns, and then try and consider what you could do differently to encourage a different result. So pulling this all together into one thing, I think I would say early in the career, it's important to prove yourself. But eventually, you've got to spend more time developing the people around you, allowing them to prove themselves. So embrace it when it's your job, and when your job is to make sure that your team thrives. Not just to be the best cook in the room, but to actually move into that leadership role. Domain 4, communication and delegation. Say less and mean it more. Early in my career, I thought, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself. And that was a mindset that kind of broke me, and it drove me into an endless cycle of burnout for a very long time. The reason I suffered with that is because I had a very hard time communicating what I needed clearly and delegating the work that the people around me needed to do. So make sure that you delegate, and delegate with clarity. I wish I had known to make sure that my team was actually understanding me, hearing me, and even checking what I had heard. It was later on in my life when Mark Ray had shared a really cool, easy trick, great question to ask when delegating or when explaining something. Just take a quick pause and ask what you heard me say. What did you hear me say? What do you think I'm asking you to do? Either one of those is a really good way to get into the core, the root of what people are hearing. One of the clear telltale signs here is that if your team is repeating mistakes, it's usually not a skill issue, it's more of a communications issue. And that communication, the biggest mistake is assuming that communication took place, and that what you communicated is actually what you needed to share. So take some time and double check that communication and make sure that it's not a breakdown or a failure in conversation. Remember, your words have tremendous power, especially as a leader, especially as a sous chef or an executive sous chef. And your words only gain more power as you have a higher position in the kitchen. So remember to use them wisely. I humbly sit here sharing these thoughts, understanding that I have quite a bit of influence on those that are around me. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I'm incredibly humbled by it. I want to make sure that I'm sharing with you the hard lessons that I've learned so maybe you can avoid them. What I always try and remind myself is to say what you mean and mean what you say. Leave people better than when you found them. Next piece when it comes to communication and delegation is that no one can read your mind. If people don't know what you expect, it's on you. If you can't explain a vision that you have, no one's going to be able to see it. And certainly nobody's going to be able to act on it. Follow-up is key. I can't tell you how much I underestimated the necessity for follow-up. And there's a little bit of a formula now that I've learned since I've been a coach, and that's basically 30% of your time is going to be spent following up after delegation. There's a word that I learned through my process, and that's abdication, right? And abdication is like delegation, except it's its evil cousin. Abdication basically means that you're giving people work to do, but without explaining to them what to do. Now, what does that look like? You know, I think about hiring a sous chef who had experience in ordering because I needed somebody who could order, and just letting him run with it and really never checking back in. That's on me. I understand that. But I think everybody can make that mistake, especially as a sous chef, when you think that somebody knows how to cut onions. And then they cut onions, you come back to the board, you've never explained kind of your process or, you know, kind of your kitchen's philosophy about that. And then you can't help but wonder how they did it wrong. Or they did it in the Roboku, and that's something that's not acceptable in your kitchen. And you never talk to them about it. That's what abdication looks like, and that's the result that you get. So when I learned that word, it explains so many of the things that I did wrong and helped me understand that delegation is really more of an active pursuit at management and making sure that I was training. So make sure to follow up and never underestimate the need to do so. I could honestly say that like there's that internal thing that's like, I should really go check on so-and-so. Go check, go see what they're doing. Build into your process opportunities for people to bring you things. You know, demo the baby carrot. Have them do one in front of you and then say, come and get me after you do the next 5. Like that's a great trick. And as a sous chef, that made a world of difference, right? Like do 5 carrots, come and get me. I just want to take a look at your work, and then you can go off and run. Set a timer in your phone so that after like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, you know to go check, even if they don't come and get you. But at the same time, you want them to come and get you so that you can check their work, and then you can kind of build into the conversation feedback loops. Next, great leaders create alignment for those around them. Alignment is simply making sure that people are heading in the direction of the bigger picture objective, and they're doing the work where they need to so they can travel that distance. And as a great leader, you can definitely work to help people understand the steps they need to take to get in that direction. Here's the end result, here's the process that we're going to take, and that's how we're going to arrive there. And that's why I talk about process. There's a process to everything that we do. More often than not, there's just a process that we think through in our heads and we take. The key to getting other people to replicate that and to scale leadership is to document it and be able to share that, and then be able to train people to that. So boil all this down into one lesson, I guess I would say, you know, you can't do everything. If you don't trust your team enough to delegate, your leadership needs work. Their skills may need work too, but your leadership skill, which is a skill you have to develop, needs to improve. Next, domain 5, guest experience and execution. Regardless of preparation, there comes a time when we have to do the thing. And execution in our world means more than most anything else. We all know that the guest only sees the final plate, but that plate is the sum of everything behind the scenes. It's the sum of everything beyond the food. So along the way, I kind of learned a few things, and I want to share those now. So the first is that the best chefs obsess over execution. They value creativity, they value everything else. They value the process, but they obsess over execution, efficiency and execution, their team's ability to execute. Take the time and help the people around you understand the necessity to execute at the standard. Attention to detail separates great kitchens from average ones. That's it. Execution matters. Paying attention to the details along the way are what are going to lead to better execution. And I remember learning at a point the phrase that how you do anything is how you do everything, or be faithful over few. And I would say the perfect example of that in kitchens are the kitchens that scale recipes in grams and have seasoning worked out into their recipes, have super dialed in recipes, and leads to a culture where the detail is valued. Next, if you allow small things to slide by, the slide becomes the standard. Standards slip when small things slide. Be consistent, be fair, and remember that nobody's perfect. There is going to be coaching, there is going to be training, there is going to be this constant ebb and flow of things, but there has to be someone who holds the standard and who helps people understand when they're falling below or moving beyond. Don't let a slide become a new standard. Next, this would have killed me as a much younger cook, but I would still say it anyway. Plate consistency is more important than innovation. A one-time flash in the pan that's super cool is cool. Consistently good is what keeps people coming back day in and day out. Predictable results lead to reliability. Guests expect reliability. And then your standards are going to dictate the guest experience. Never lower those standards. Understand that they may slip, they may slide from time to time, but the goal is to always keep them in a place where you're pushing back to them. Regardless of business volume, a standard has to be a standard, and you've got to be the one that holds it. Because managers live in glass houses, executive chefs live in glass houses. And if you're not withholding the standard, then the people around you aren't going to either. So pull all this together. I think what I would say is don't let a single dish leave the past that you wouldn't serve a mentor you respect. Act like Thomas Keller is in your dining room. Act like Grant Achatz is coming in and is going to sit down and have a plate from your kitchen. Your standards define your reputation. You're in control of that 100%. Domain 6, craftsmanship. Excellence is a habit. As a culinary executive, the cooking must be the easy part. To be a culinary manager, cooking must be the easy part. And over time, I've learned that mastery, although talent is a part of it, isn't just about talent. It's more about discipline and repetition in what matters the most. So let's break that down a little bit. One of the small lessons here is to do the right thing regardless of who's looking, especially if no one is looking. Always do the right thing. Take the right step in the recipe. Build the right flavor. Do the right thing, build the right habit. Next, fundamentals and their mastery are more valuable long-term than chasing trends. I like to think about this as like, there's always going to be something that's in fashion, but at the end of the day, there's still core philosophies that are going to make food taste good. Microgreens are going to come and go. Garnishes and tuiles are going to come and go. But properly cooked meat, perfectly cooked pastry, and hot food served hot is always going to be a valuable fundamental. Program those things as early as possible. Next, talent is built, it's not given. There's nobody on earth that can just give you talent, right? You may be born with some, but real talent and real sustainability is something that has to be built. Has to be built with practice. And the best chefs that I've ever worked with, they train harder, they train smarter, they train longer. They put in the effort to evolve the work that they do and find the ways to make things so that they're unbreakable. Another lesson that is so easily overlooked is that deep repetition creates muscle memory. And I want you to hear routine when I say muscle memory. Doing the right thing out of reflex is mastery. And in order to build that masterful reflex, repetition is required. And repetition in doing the right thing is the way to get the right routine. And this is why it's so important to do the right thing regardless of who's looking, because if you're doing the wrong thing, then that's the repetition that you're building. It's very hard to undo that programming. So it's much easier to just do it right from the first time. However, if there's bad habits, they can be replaced with great habits. You just have to put in the reps. And that's the next piece. Don't just practice, iterate, focus. Purposeful practice is what's going to make that muscle memory matter. When you practice, figure out how to work faster, cleaner, more effective, more efficient, and more precise. And then do it again, and then do it again, and reflect, see what's working, and do it again. And if you need to, get around people who are going to help you push your standard. Analyze your technique and improve constantly. The key philosophy of the American Master Chefs is to stay a student forever. Forever the student. And I think that's so fitting because the best chefs never stop learning. And I can honestly say that every day that I'm in this business, I learn more of what I don't know. I'm very humble in that. I'm very proud to say when I don't know what something is because I'm going to go figure it out and I'm going to try and learn it. But don't ever stop learning. And the advice that I would give to myself is that you're always going to learn. So don't ever think that there's an arrival point. Remember that there's no shortcuts. You've got to put in the reps and you have to do the right thing all the time. And eventually it gets easier because you become faster and you have to think about it less. Altogether, that equates to slow down and build strong fundamentals. Your creativity is going to be stronger when it's grounded in true craftsmanship. That brings me to 7, resilience and agility, AKA adapt or die. The best chefs don't panic, they adapt. And the chefs that don't adapt struggle and suffer more and more while work piles up. I remember Chef Walker once said that true leadership is defined by somebody who can keep their cool when everything's going wrong. That's so critical because you have to be able to adapt to situations. Not only that, but be ready to adapt to tools that you can leverage into the work. Right? Have you ever heard of Slack? If you haven't, check it out. It's a phenomenal communication tool. Have you ever worked with a tool like Monday or Upwork? Great project management tools that might be something that help you organize the work that you do. Have you ever used Opsy or another culinary management software? If you haven't, check it out. Have you ever used ChatGPT to help you with your inventories or to help you be more effective? Because implementing tools that make you more effective are going to make you more effective. It may take a little bit of time, there may be a little bit of a learning curve, but understanding how to use Excel makes life a lot easier when it comes time to building spreadsheets, writing budgets, right? Things used to be done on pencil and paper. Excel makes that infinitely easier. There's even more software, even more tools available that make it even easier to excel. Remember that mistakes happen, so fix them fast, move on, and don't get stuck on them. Just learn from them and don't repeat them. Take a moment and make sure that you're not reacting out of emotion, because it's important to never let emotions drive your decision making. Take a moment to pause and control your response. Another great piece of advice that was given to me that I want to share is that problem-solving skills need to evolve as well. The way that we handle problems as a cook can't be the same way that we handle them as a sous chef, and the way that we handle things as a sous chef can't be the way that we handle things as an executive chef. And there becomes a point, a tipping point, when problem-solving skills matter far more than cooking skills. And we're talking about problem-solving food, problem-solving service problems, and problem-solving human resource, people, human nature problems. All of those things start to kind of weave themselves in, so that problem-solving skill is probably going to be the muscle that needs the most training as you grow. I know it was for me. If you're not evolving, you're falling behind. Not to say that you constantly need to be innovating or implementing new pieces, but it's important to keep your knives sharp and continue to talk to people in the industry, talk to people in other industries, and read. Remember, try and take in new ideas that can help you be more effective in your work. That's what I'm here for, and I imagine that's why you're spending time with me. So hopefully you've got a laundry list of takeaways from this. Next, a major thing that I need to tell myself is that resilience is a muscle, and that muscle is built slowly over time. You know, I would have told myself to slow down quite a bit because rushing to get somewhere, although I may think I'm in the right place, wouldn't have allowed me the stress, the experience, and all of the subcurrent skills that I needed to develop. There is no long-term value in rushing. Accelerating learning is huge, but stress management comes from learning how to deal and encounter and overcome stress. That's true for you, and that's true for the team that's around you. So there's no major value in shielding your team from kitchen stress either. So all pulled together into one thing, I guess resilience isn't about never failing. It's about how you recover and learning to not make the same mistake twice. Domain number 8, counterbalance. If your cup is empty, there's absolutely no way to fill someone else's. For years, I thought sacrificing everything for my career was the only way to be great. And in a lot of ways, it helped me advance and it helped me move along very, very quickly. But there were some very lonely, very dark periods of time in there. Eventually, I learned that sustainability matters just as much as intensity. It's a skill that requires time and energy, and it requires effort to learn. I like to express my thought process as learning how to cross the two worlds that we live. Learning to be a better husband at work and learning to be a better chef at home. Communicating as well as I do as a chef with the priority that I put on events, putting that on things at home. And the compassion and the patience that I have at home, applying those to people in the kitchen. When I do those things, I'm inevitably introduced to opposing values. Not one is more important than the other, but they allow me to focus where I need to put my focus and not lose sight of that which I don't want to miss out on. Something that I really wish I could have told myself. When you burn out, you're not a good leader. These are all things that are very true. It takes a little bit of time to recover, and very often in that state, it's very easy to make some mistakes that can set you back. It's not really worth it, right? So it's okay to burn yourself. It's okay to drive yourself. And I think I'm where I'm at in my life because I've pushed incredibly hard. But to keep it sustainable without requiring long periods of time of recovery or creating damage and burning the things that are around me, there's a point when you can pull back and take a day or two and do what you need to do so that you can get back into it. Only you can really understand what's right for you from a work volume. I'm not saying don't push, but I'm definitely saying make sure that you're finding a way to counterbalance. Pace yourself and think of this as a marathon, not as a sprint. Sprint at periods because it can be fun, it can be very rewarding, but remember that when you get back into the office, there's still a marathon to run. A great lesson that would have made a big difference earlier on would have been that time away from the kitchen makes you better in it. It's okay, if you're in the kitchen 6 days a week and you've got that one day off, take that day, do the things that you need to do so that you can be better for those 6 days. I would have been far more effective as opposed to going into work on that day and then spending less effective time because I was tired or because I didn't have the rest that I needed or because I didn't get my laundry done on my day off. Rest and recovery sharpen creativity and leadership. They just do. Creativity requires a little bit of rest. It definitely requires work and it definitely requires effort to bring it to life. But at some point, it will suffer. It reaches a point of diminishing utility. Remember that success is more about how effectively you work, not just how much you do, but what you do with purpose. So to pull it all together, I think into one finite point is to take care of yourself. The kitchen's gonna be there tomorrow. Take care of the people that are around you because you're gonna need them to lift you up at some point in time. That's just a few things that I would have loved to have shared with myself. And now that I have them, I hope that you can take them and you can definitely use them to be more effective in everything that you do. If you take one of these things and you learn from it and it makes you better in your role, then, well, my goal was accomplished. Everything that I've learned in my career comes back to one thing: structure. Structure gives control, clarity, and it leads to longevity and sustainability. If you're struggling with the same challenges I've encountered, disorganization, team challenges, burnout, then it's time to build the framework that allows you to thrive. That's exactly what I do. I help executive chefs just like you with my programs. The key is to implement 8 domains of culinary leadership. And in those 8 domains, it's much easier to sort and find the problem and implement a solution, which to me is the key to running a high-performance kitchen without burning yourself out. Not about doing more, but doing the thing that matters and being more effective. If you're at a point where you want to take control of your career, develop and implement systems that work and lead with confidence, then schedule a call with me today using the link below, and let's take your leadership to the next level. At the very least, download this guide and take my Executive Chef Leadership Assessment, get your free report, and bring your culinary career to the next level. If you took something useful from this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. Thank you so much for spending as much time with me as you have, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.